Thanks for that welcome. A little bit about me, Steve and Arthur. I'm a staff software engineer over at Coinbase. I've been here now for a year. Prior to Coinbase, I was at Yelp for 6.5 years, which is a local business review website. Got into FinOps coming from an application performance background, so engineering, quantitative-based analysis. How do we make the user experience better, faster, and it turns out less expensive? So that really captivated me. I was like, hey, is this a thing? And it turns out it is, so that's how I got here. I've done some talks in the past, SplunkConf 2021, Cloud Health, Cloud Live 2019, hierarchical perspectives, allocating resources in a continually evolving organization. Anyone at that talk? Yeah, so, all right, okay, cool. I've been involved in a couple of FinOps Foundation working groups as well. A bit about Coinbase, founded in 2012 by Brian Armstrong. It's a publicly traded US-based crypto company, 98 million verified users, 145 billion Q1 trading volume, 130 billion assets on platform. Do I have a clicker, by the way? Next slide, please. Uh-oh. Thanks, no worries. Okay, quick agenda, context setting, talk format explanation. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. I'm going to do a quick slide, day in the life of what does my job even look like. The meat of the talk is this crawl versus run comparative analysis. This is why you're all here, kind of looking at what I had at my past organization, mostly run level organization, starting out from scratch at Coinbase. What did we end up doing? So, in the context of the 2021 crypto bull run, Coinbase faced some challenges, scaling across the board, not even just customer adoption, usage, but also in terms of new product and feature launches, internal hiring growth also. So there are a lot of reliability challenges in the face of that record level of growth. Horizontal scaling was widely used, and utilization, when it was even known, was left intentionally low to provide enough headroom for random spikes. So that brings us to our FinOps story starting in 2022. Select a team model. We've done a little bit of both. We have a steering committee. That's like a central and cross-functional dedicated team. I've got teammates here today, FP&A, sourcing, and so on. I'm an infrastructure engineer. We also have infrastructure engineers who are more focused on a hub and spoke based approach, setting best practices and working with Coinbase development teams to roll those optimization work streams out. As I said, a bit about me, day in the life. Especially when you're getting started and everything is supposed to have been done yesterday, you're going to have some tactical work, how to actually deliver cost optimizations. But you also need to make sure you're looking far enough forward to not miss out on important strategic work, like what to actually work on. How do you prioritize things against each other and help teams standardize a win and take it and ship it everywhere? So for me, some of the most important things that I was able to do in that kind of strategic role is looking ahead, seeing the capabilities that we're going to need the most, coming up with position papers to make recommendations on how to address those, and then making sure that execution is moving forward while also validating that we're actually doing the right things. And this takes us to the rest of the talk. It's our training level, as most video games have. We're also speed running in this talk, by the way. So routing is an important speed running concept, and it's kind of the process of developing an optimal sequence of actions throughout to a video game. So there's a lot of FinOps Foundation capabilities, and the framework kind of helps you understand what mature organizations are doing to run their programs. But if you're just getting started, it might be overwhelming. So in this talk, I'm going to share my opinions about what your critical path through FinOps could look like starting out. And as a quick caveat, I'm a technical employee. In this talk, I'm not going to do a disservice to a lot of capabilities that are required to deliver an end-to-end FinOps program. So you're not going to hear about organizational alignment in this talk. You're not going to learn how to do rate optimization. Instead, we're going to skip those sections. We're going to carve out a critical path to the end boss that fits within this talk time limit, focused on more technical capabilities and what we did to deliver ROI quickly, with an ultimate end goal of reaching that white whale, that North Star, measuring unit costs. Okay, so the next step in the training level, the comparative analysis slides. This is the meat of the talk, and we're going to show what this slide layout is. So you've got the capability, the maturity level, left and right, what I had previously in cost allocation, something like consistent tagging or hierarchical perspectives. And then what we chose to prioritize to deliver value quickly with the least amount of work possible. So for a goal like providing product level cost visibility in AWS, we chose to implement AWS cost categories. AWS cost categories was kind of a no-brainer decision when we're looking at where things are today compared to even a few years ago. Doesn't require an extra vendor. It has powerful categorization functionality, ongoing feature enhancements over the years like rules cost data backfilling that came out in Q3 2022, hierarchical rules, which themselves, those came out in Q4 2020, so it's a continually evolving product and made sense for us to get that per product cost visibility. And a video game and training level wouldn't be complete without a mini boss. You're new here and you need access to privileged accounts. And I think some people in this audience may have seen similar challenges before. And I think the best way to solve a problem like this is to meet security in the middle and acknowledge that billing tasks happen in highly secure accounts. And we can actually meet in the middle and propose some changes to IAM, potentially proposing 3 roles, a read-only role that's going to be used by product and engineering and help them view cost dashboards and understand real-time cost. Billing ops, that's going to provide some read-write actions for users like FP&A who need to save and create reports. And a billing pseudo role, that's going to be used by billing admins or engineers on the FinOps team and permit sensitive read-write actions like purchasing commitments, accepting marketplace offers, changing billing data, changing billing information, and so on. Lastly, I'd also propose that this is the right time for you to put forward a suggestion of like an organization-wide SCP or service control policy to help build rapport with your security team, as well as then prevent expensive actions happening outside of root accounts. This GitHub gist is a really great resource and a baseline for expensive actions that could form your service control policy. Back to the roles. If you start with managed policies like I suggested here, you'll also be ready for the upcoming July 7th IAM changes to AWS billing, AWS portal deprecation. All right, so into the rest of the game, the inform phase. Data ingestion and normalization. Vendor bills come in a variety of formats, intervals, some include discounting, some don't. We've got focus coming out, but that's still going to require a lot of work. Guess what we can do instead? A spreadsheet. So I'm not thrilled to admit that we did a lot of this in a mega spreadsheet, but that is the fundamental approach to speedrunning. Move quickly and get value fast. So spreadsheets enabled kind of combining data from multiple sources and applying the different rules necessary to run the program. And I'm applying a little bit of editorial discretion in saying that this capability, along with cost allocation from the previous slide, that was the foundation kind of to the entire program. But also keep in mind there are some iterations here because this foundational capability is going to inform how we use the data, so in kind of like data analysis and showback capabilities, as well as then budget management. And there are cycles because once you actually get this data in front of you, you're going to start to prioritize what vendors are in scope for the program and how do we allocate effort to work on what parts of what vendors. Resource utilization and efficiency. I want to talk about block storage. I've spent a lot of time in my FinOps career working on S3 cost optimization, There are a lot of things you can do and a lot of things you should do. Sorry, why did I say that? Okay, this is a different one. This isn't about that. We'll come back to S3. Oh, that's okay. Anyway, let's talk about EBS instead. As a migration from GP2 to GP3, that's a well-understood migration path, and it was the hottest thing 2 years ago. But if you don't have a FinOps function, you might not have gotten buy-in on that migration by just saying, it's kind of the same as before, but it'll be 20% less expensive. So it's a pretty simple migration, even throwing Kubernetes into the mix. The way I rolled this out in Kubernetes on my team, prerequisite, use the newest Kubernetes CSI driver that lets you create GP3 volumes. Create and test a GP3 storage class in Kubernetes that sets IOPS and throughput to the same levels as the GP2 storage class based on volume size. And what you can do is actually delete and recreate that storage class in place using the same name. That's going to take care of your new stateful set deployments using that volume type. It's crazy that it works, and it totally does. It's safe and effective. Kubernetes maintainers and GitHub comments are kind of championing that approach. The total downtime where you didn't have a storage class in place with that name was about 5 seconds. So that totally worked for us. Then, through the AWS API or using a governance automation tool, you can actually then select relevant volumes and upgrade them in batches based on AWS quotas for concurrent EBS volume modifications, so that actually can happen in place. Make sure you still test that in dev, test, prod. Give a few days for complaints to arise, but very safe upgrade in place. Speaking of doing upgrades in place in bulk, you might want to reach for a management and automation tool that will help you, especially as you start to uncover resources in aggregate cost data and what resources are running. You might be overwhelmed by the scale. Cloud Custodian can help with both. It's an open source tool that provides a lot of help in terms of discovery, visibility, as well as then the automation piece as well. It's also multi-cloud. So it can help you with things like, hypothetically, running a modify volume operation in place to move from GP2 to GP3, or setting up deletion policies for unattached and unused volumes in Kubernetes clusters that exist in pretty much similar ways in both AWS and GCP. Those policies are extremely open-ended and support use cases like tagging before deletion, et cetera, if you have extra requirements around removing EBS volumes. The next boss fight, you might see in your organization things like once large dollar values get assigned to certain projects and ownership, people might try to take a zero-sum approach and pass the buck. We're going to skip this boss because this didn't happen at Coinbase. We have a strong DRI, or directly responsible individual culture, that runs throughout our company and prevented this particular issue from happening. So we had some green flags that made that possible. People who are okay with tough measurement-based goals, buy-in from the top down, coming out in an emergency sense, with an immediate call to action and the program that organized around our top vendor spend. And ultimately, a program that was then successful against the targets we set for ourselves for multiple quarters in a row, kept people interested and more people coming in and wanting to be affiliated with that program's success. Next capability, the next phase of the lifecycle, optimize. So now we're finally getting to object storage. We're going to be talking about S3 storage lens for real this time. And while there are a lot of ways that you can approach understanding S3 storage and usage, by bucket name is typically the one you're going to want to start with first, even though that isn't available by default in a tool like Cost Explorer. S3 storage lens is going to help you uncover and understand your largest buckets. It can be enabled from your organization management account. Basic capabilities are free. You just have to turn it on. It also has some great FinOps-oriented low-hanging fruit detectors for easy cost wins, so expensive data that people might not even know they have, previous versions, failed multi-part uploads. And while something like S3 Storage Lens isn't as powerful as storage class analytics, it gives you that short list to start working on, and you don't have to wait for data collection to occur like with storage class analytics. Compute. It's definitely a top concern, and we've been focused on this a lot over the last year in various ways. We started the program with an initial OKR, the crawl level, the pre-crawl level, to just say, you know what, we need to reduce this. Let's set a dollar number and aim for that. These days, and we did that by doing things like instance type modernization or ASG right sizing. Enabling EC2 detailed monitoring gives you 1-minute metrics. It gives engineers a lot more confidence in the ability to use auto-scaling because your auto-scaling data is going to be more granular. Warm pools enable more use cases for EC2 auto-scaling as well. These days, we're focused more on efficiency than cost targets, and have added a few more capabilities to this list, things like the ARM or Graviton platform compatibility, Kubernetes migration, which creates more bin packing opportunity for super small containers that previously received their own tiny dedicated instances in our previous gen architecture. Right-sizing migration tooling, and also gets a centrally managed capacity story. So these are the levers we're working on these days with that ultimate goal of reducing monthly dollars spent on stateless compute. And when you start reducing compute capacity, you might also notice that you've increased the risk that your service will degrade or become unavailable during increases in organic traffic. We did have some incidents due to our cost program, and correctly sizing a system to optimize both reliability and cost is a muscle. It's a learned skill that takes time and experience to develop. So in terms of some of these incidents, 50% of them were able to roll forward that were not user-facing, and out of these, 3 out of the 9 did also roll forward. But even for incidents that occurred that had to roll back, some number of incidents will happen, and it's an explicit trade-off that we're making because the ROI of the cost program is worth the cost of the incidents. So start, if you're not doing it today, by measuring the cost of an incident. An incident will also help uncover, a FinOps cost optimization program like this will also help uncover some systemic issues in your infrastructure that might need to be addressed holistically. So while it's not the job of the FinOps team, definitely can get some help partnering on things like that in terms of incident response procedures, observability coverage, the ability for infrastructure deployments to operate safely, maybe through either experimentation, A/B, blue-green deployments, canaries, and so on. And this even takes us to the broader topic of trade-offs. In general, like a cost versus reliability trade-off, maybe you can quantify it in terms of a normalized dollar value. You can also do the same thing when it comes to something like developer velocity. Maybe running tests in parallel will be more expensive. Time is money, but money is money too. So measure the developer time and say, maybe it's worth it to spend more money and get that time back. Security, things like cloud guard duty, security hub, AWS config, all of these things are producing useful data that you're paying for and may have some dollar value assigned to it. So try to normalize things in terms of dollar value. 2 references that I really would like to recommend to you all for this. AWS well-architected framework will help you understand making trade-offs among the pillars for running productionized, well-run production systems, and the pillars then can be measured and traded off each other in terms of dollars. Another reference is a book, which is called How to Measure Anything, and it helps you understand how things that even appear to be unmeasurable on the surface can actually be quantified and measured. Ultimately, being able to develop this superpower is going to help you in your career as well. The next phase of the life cycle, operate. We've shipped some wins, and we've made some early progress against the baseline. How do we make sure that unexpected regressions aren't going to set us back against our goals or slow us down? A quick and easy cost alerting coverage, AWS cost anomaly detection is going to be a good first step on that path. It's an ML black box spike detection system that detects anomalies by AWS service without much configuration at all. And it can be enabled in your organization management account. But it can also work to be enabled by cost category as well, or cost allocation tag. So we also chose to set up cost monitors for products, as discussed in the earlier cost allocation slide. And unit costs, it continues to remain that North Star that we've been working towards. And you know what? We've made a lot of progress towards that goal. Many of the capabilities discussed today are those key prerequisites, in my opinion, to be ready to start the unit economics journey. In particular, data ingestion and normalization, cost allocation. But also, unit economics is itself a prerequisite to reach higher levels of maturity in other capabilities in that iterative fashion of the inform, optimize, operate lifecycle. The idea of prerequisite capabilities here isn't to discourage you from the idea of using units in other places. For example, you might be able to introduce something like a CPU metric, dollar per NFU in AWS as a CPU usage proxy, very simply. It's something that would be available in just Cost Explorer itself, and then those costs that might be volatile over time, like AWS spot pricing, gives you some level of insight into the price over time per unit that you're paying. When fit together with that, fitting it all together, right, you're going to continue to iterate and work towards that critical path of giving the value to your business. One of my favorite, more mature unit economics capabilities is dollar per request per every system, and then doing a correlation. And I spoke about that in my Splunk conference. Here's a link to that talk as well if you'd like to view that. And it takes us to our final boss fight, vendor evaluations. So there are a lot of resources. Some of them just got announced today. The FinOps Foundation framework is going to guide your requirements, and do develop those from first principles. What do you need to deliver? What are the capabilities you need to deliver? Do the maturity assessment that the FinOps Foundation has published. It's going to help you identify gaps against your target level of maturity and these capabilities that you've prioritized. Then use a tool or reference like the FinOps landscape. That is going to provide you the overview of the vendor solutions that might meet those needs. Browse vendor websites, look at their developer documentation, and then, this is gonna sound crazy, but use a tool like ChatGPT and discuss with it how to interpret all the data that you've collected. I like to think of ChatGPT as a super-powered rubber duck in terms of like rubber duck debugging. ChatGPT will understand what you're saying, and it'll help you understand what you're asking and help you clarify your own understanding of the problem. So, to quickly recap, as the outcome of something like Coinbase's vendor evaluation process, you might have your own version then of what your company's FinOps landscape should look like. For us, we built everything on top of our ownership service system and have mapping through all of our CSP and SaaS providers, FinOps vendors to data ingest, normalize, and cost allocate, and provide these capabilities that we consider to be the critical path capabilities that provide these ways of interacting with our users at the top and deliver value to them. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is spend our team's limited resources on activities that are higher on this chart and adding the value to our users, understanding the business in unique ways, and getting support from vendor partners to provide more commoditized capabilities for us instead of spinning up our team and time to do that. And here's one example of a capabilities guide that was created as well at the end of our program. We had horizontal work streams like this for many vendors. These are the work streams that were owned by infrastructure engineers and fanned out across the company. And other vendors also had a similar list of optimizations that people could review and choose to apply to their individual systems and circumstances. So with that, we have about 5 minutes for questions.
We're going to use the all-powerful, all-knowing talking cube. Who's got a question? We can throw this thing too, so this will be fun. Oh, we're going for it.
Okay, let's see if it still works. So interested to see the CSP and SaaS. How many SaaS providers are you including in this model, and what are the challenges of including a SaaS model data side by side with the CSP data?
Yeah, it goes back to that data ingest and normalize capability where we're still using a spreadsheet. There's definitely some challenges, but I think that overall, and again, you might kind of refer to something like the Pareto principle and understand where your break even for inclusion in the program is. And we chose to draw that line around 5 vendors or so for inclusion in our program. It's going to vary based on your kind of relative levels of spend between the vendors where you're going to choose to invest or not.
Thank you.
I'd love to know what are the different tool sets that you're using from right? You're talking about ingestion of the data from the, not only the cost data, the other data that you're ingesting. Right? What is the other, where are the tools that you're injecting, how is it working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tool development is a process that could take time, and again, a lot of these things were kind of rolled up in a vendor evaluation process where we've ultimately chosen to either defer implementing that capability or maybe implement a stopgap capability that gets us part of the way there. So for something like cost anomaly detection, which I mentioned is our alerting stopgap capability, those alerts are generated through email, and so it's not ideal. It's definitely not directly targeting the folks who are like making changes every day, but it is providing a stopgap capability. So ultimately this talk is kind of that critical path to delivering some value quickly. And
are you using any third-party tools to inject the data? Are you injecting to Splunk? Are you injecting, where are you injecting all this data?
Yeah, in terms of like particular tool selection, we didn't want to name any tools in this talk.
So what does your crypto portfolio look like?
Yeah, it's really exciting to work at Coinbase, and having been there for 1 year, I gotta say that I'm still excited to work in this space and help to develop Web3. I've also been a longtime crypto enthusiast, having signed up for my Coinbase account in 2014. So.
Yeah, there will be no SEC audits at this FinOps conference. You want to go long?
You talked about the incident cost, right? I am more curious to know, like, which level you go. Like, do you go at the infra level, or do you also drill down into like humans and resources and all those?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I might have talked about more if I had more time. However, the ownership service that underlies this kind of understanding of our landscape is developed by a partner team called our Major Incident Command Team. It's kind of like a team of SREs, Site Reliability Engineers, and they kind of solved tackling that ownership problem. You might think of it like a service catalog or something like that. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I can connect offline.
Perfect, thank you.
And Steve, if more people want to connect offline with you, where would they do such a thing?
Yeah. See me at the aircraft carrier. I'll be there. Let's network and share ideas.
And then can I get one big round of applause for Steven? There's a lot.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.